Hola, Commanders. I'm the Roleplay Gamer and I like to party. Today we're going to talk a bit about Star Citizen. Just as a bit of background, I am a huge space sim fan. I love space, I love spaceships even more, and Star Citizen was the first and only thing I've ever backed on Kickstarter. I got in pretty early with the first batch of backers. So, based on that information, you may be expecting a bit of a hype video here. Me talking about how fucking cool it is. So, I held off on playing it for any extended period of time up to this point, just because I knew there wasn't a game there. They're releasing it in a bunch of smaller modules, if you're not aware. I think they first came out with Arena Commander, which is a dogfighting module. Now you can walk around and... Oh, actually, no, the first thing was the hangar. You could just walk around your hangar and look in your ships and whatnot. So there's really not much there. You can race now. Just as a disclaimer, I've only tried the Arena Commander component up to this point. I will be trying the rest of it in the coming days and weeks. I just really felt strongly about the flight mechanics and the feel of it, and that's what I want to talk about today. So my first thought was, what the fuck? So I went through the tutorial and it feels really clunky. I don't like the feel of flying with keyboard and mouse. It feels like trying to wrestle with a one-legged cow on steroids or something like that. It's really messed up. So my absolute first thought was, all right, I got to rebind the controls. And that's where it all started to fall apart. Okay, so there are a lot of little things that you gotta tweak, and they're not all like really obvious as to what they do. So first up, look, I understand that it's a complex flight system, and there's a lot involved, but I really wish it was just easier to sort everything out. Like, if you haven't played any Star Citizen yet, fair warning, it will take like at least an hour just to figure everything out. I haven't yet. I've just remapped the most basic controls to stuff that actually makes sense. Because, look, you may like the default controls, but I'll be honest, I can't see how anyone would. It just seems like a mess to me. But, you know, I will concede, hey, maybe someone likes it. I don't know. But, yeah, it took like an hour and a half just to sift through all the clunky menus and remap everything. But then when I finally got into combat and just flying around, I tried free flight mode or whatever it was called first, just to get a hang of the way flying feels. It didn't get any better. This is not an easy flight model. This is not Elite Dangerous. And again, I'm super wary of comparing Elite Dangerous comparing this to Elite Dangerous, because I don't want to perpetuate the circle jerk of like, oh, which one's better, Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen? They can exist in the same space, it's fine, you know, we don't have to tear one down and make the other one the victor. It's alright, I will probably be playing both when Star Citizen finally comes out. But, you know, I've praised Elite Dangerous in the past for nailing the balance between accessibility of the flight model and depth. It feels deep. It feels like you're actually controlling a spaceship, but it's also really easy. Star Citizen doesn't do that. I guess it feels like you're controlling a spaceship, but it's just so not intuitive, you know. And let me just warn you before you shut off the video here. I have changed my opinion on this after playing a little bit more, but this is just my first impressions of the flight model. It's wild. Using a joystick is not great. really. I prefer it to just the mouse because I prefer the feel of the joystick. I think moving around, if I were to do racing and whatnot, the joystick would be my preference. But it is not easy to hit things with a joystick. I've gotten better, as you'll see from the video here. This is footage of the Vandal Swarm, or however you pronounce that alien whatever thing. So keep in mind, this is against bots. This is not against humans. I fully expect proper humans to hand my ass to me on a silver and or gold platter. So it's a little bit confusing. Like, I understand Star Citizen is supposed to be more Newtonian in its physics, right? You're slidey, and if you're boosting in one direction and then you turn off all your thrusters, you should still go in that direction, more or less. And it's great that it gives you so much control. Like, once I got used to it, I felt like such a better pilot in Star Citizen than I do in Elite Dangerous. Yeah, in Elite Dangerous, you can turn off your flight assist and you still, you glide around in a somewhat more Newtonian fashion. It feels easier to do that in Star Citizen, and I found myself using it a hell of a lot more than I do in Elite Dangerous, and it kind of made me feel like a badass. But then again, because it's so slidey, it also feels like it's taking control away from you because you're constantly fighting with the physics. And I'm really not sure where I sit on this, because my first reaction is, well, this feels terrible. This is not fun. This is just, fighting with the spaceship. But on the other hand, I kind of feel, well, if it truly is more quote-unquote realistic, that's kind of cool too. I'm not really sure where I sit there. So then I suppose there's the argument of just how realistic it is and how... I mean, these ships don't exist, right? We haven't got anything close to them, right? So how do we really know how they're going to behave? I don't know. I don't know, man. But that aside, the upshot here is there are, at least on the surface, a lot of options here. You have a lot more control of your ship than I've seen before, and that is intimidating and amazing. I think it's going to be really difficult for your average gamer, even a lot of people who are into space sims. I think it's going to be difficult for them to get into this. And a lot of people are going to be turned away from the get-go. But I think on the whole, it's a good thing. It's growing on me. Despite my first reaction of, this is ridiculous. It's just too hard to control. Now I have gotten used to it a little bit. And yeah, it's not always fun because still feel like I'm fighting with the goddamn ship here. It kind of feels cool in retrospect, I suppose, that, oh shit, so much more control. It feels like a big boy's toy, not to belittle like fans of other flight models or fans of Elite Dangerous or this and that, hey, like I said, I actually prefer the flying in that because it's easier rather. But yeah, this feels like a enthusiast model airplane compared to like a paper plane. But that being said, there are still a few things that in my opinion could be refined. Like, if you're using a keyboard, for example, for strafing and yaw, which for me personally makes the most sense if you're going like keyboard and joystick, it needs to be a hell of a lot more responsive. And I think this transcends the issue of realism and Newtonian physics, because from the fact that we've got fighters in space, we've already sort of jumped the shark. And as much as it pains me to admit, because I am like the world's biggest aircraft carrier in space fan, Battlestar Galactica is my shit. You give me a big old ship that shoots out smaller ships and I'm there. I'm there with bells on and I'm good to go. I'm all in. But I have to admit that there's really not much point in having little fighters in space. So from the moment that we have them, I feel like we have to make concessions to make them feel better to fly. You know, they probably, you know, if this sort of shit existed, yeah, they probably would be ultra floaty and a pain in the ass to fly. But it's a game. It's a fantasy. Look, if you really want to go like the simulation round, say, well, it's not a game, it's a sim. All right, fine. It's still a fantasy simulation. These things don't exist. So, you know, concessions have to be made. They have to make guesses. I don't know. Maybe I'm the asshole and fuck me, right? But I think it should be made a little bit more responsive, just to make the flying a little bit, just to make it feel better. I don't even care about it being easier. If it stayed this difficulty, up until release and beyond, you know what? I think I'd be fine with it. I just want the flight to feel better and like you have more control, because on the surface it looks like you do, because you have all these options of minute control of your ship, but in practice it doesn't feel like you do. And again, granted, it might be because I haven't figured everything out yet and I'm just a shitty pilot. That's certainly a possibility, but just the basic flying doesn't empower you. At least that's how I felt about it. Anyway, guys, I've said my piece. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below if you have played Star Citizen and what you think of the flight model and how it compares to other space sims. Also, let me know if you want to see more Star Citizen on the channel in the future. Taste the game, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time. Roleplay Gamer, out.